Welcome to the world of probiotic foods. This is Cultured Food Life with your host, Donna Schwenk.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show today, and we are going to be talking about one of my favorite foods, soup. I love soup. We make so much soup at our house, and it's one of my favorite meals, and I make a ton of it, and it's kind of because it's a one-pot meal. I think soup is comforting. I think it's delicious. My family loves soup. Everybody just seems to enjoy it, and I love it because I can make a meal in just one pot. And my kids love it a lot. And this last week, the reason I'm doing this show is basically because of my two older kids, Macy and DJ. And this last week, Macy got some kind of a respiratory bug or something, and she wasn't feeling very good. And she was calling me on the phone and just telling me how bad she was feeling, and I told her to come over and that I would make her soup. Well, it doesn't take very long for Macy to get in the car and come over to get the soup, because Macy loves soup. And once she got here, I had this new soup recipe that I had never made before, and Macy loved it. She walked around holding her bowl like it was her best friend. And at one point, her eyes were filled up with tears, and she told me how much she loved this soup. And she asked if she could take some of the extra home with her, and I said yes. It was helping her throat, and her ears were plugged, and she just didn't feel like eating much, but she wanted the soup. And it was a kind of a new soup I had made, and it had tons of veggies in it. Some broth, coconut milk, green chilies, white beans, and had a bunch of cilantro in it. And I had done that on purpose. I had put that cilantro in it on purpose because I know that cilantro, which is an herb, contains a lot of good qualities of a compound called borneol it's capable of destroying viruses and germs that cause colds. And I know it's very healing to the body. Plus, I like the flavor of it. And I always put herbs in my soup. That's something I've always done because I have herbs on my counter that I grow all the time, year round. And I've always done that. So I love to make soup because I love adding herbs to it. And the very next day she called me saying that the soup was the best thing ever and she was feeling better. And she was so glad she had another bowl that I'd give her some to take home. And I think that Macy's attachment to soup goes way back when she used to have irritable bowel syndrome. And this was in the days before I'd found cultured foods. And right at the very beginning when she got this, she started developing food allergies. She had all kinds of stomach pain whenever she ate. And she got diagnosed with IBS. And I really believe that the soup was a key element in repairing her damaged gut lining. Bone broths are all the rage right now, and for good reason. They're very, very healing to the body. Soup can release healing compounds such as collagen, proline, glycine, and glutamine that can not only heal the gut, but reduce inflammation, not only in the gut, but in the respiratory system. And it also helps improve allergies, and it even works on things like arthritis. It's interesting because I actually just got a book by Louise Hay and Heather Dane called The Bone Broth Secret. And it is such a wonderful book, and it's full of soup recipes made with bone broth. And it talks a lot about the benefits that they impart to people. And I highly recommend you getting this book. It's really good. And it's just, if you like soups, you'll love this book. And in it, they talked about one of the studies done in 2000, and it was published in Chest. And that's the official journal of the American College of Chest Physicians. And they studied chicken soup and found that it does indeed alleviate symptoms of the common cold, such as clearing the mucus out, opening respiratory pathways, and it also provides easy digestion of nutrients. According to the medical doctor and UCLA professor Irvine Zymite, chicken soup naturally contains the amino acid cysteine, which chemically resembles the bronchitis drug acetylcysteine. And it works so effectively that many doctors actually do prescribe chicken soups and soups made with bone broth because they're so healing, not only to the body, but also when you have a cold or a flu or a virus. It's very, very healing for respiratory symptoms. It wasn't about a week later that my son DJ, after my daughter Macy had gotten this little bug, my son started to feel bad, my son DJ. And I think he was starting to catch the same thing that she had. And both of them had been kind of burning the candle at both ends and kind of have gotten run down. And he was leaving for a trip and came to spend the night with us so we could take him to the airport the next day. And when he came in the door Monday night, he didn't look very good. And I said, do you not feel good? And he goes, no, I think I'm starting to get sick. And I had made some dinner that night, and I had decided I was trying a new recipe, and it was actually cabbage soup. And I'd never made it before. And the reason I was making it was because, first of all, I'm in love with my Instapot that I got last year. I throw everything in there and I can make dinner in like 12 minutes. And I'm so busy all the time. I love this Instapot and I love to make soup in it. It's one of my favorite appliances. So that night I decided to make this cabbage soup because I had a whole bunch of extra heads of cabbage and I was trying to use some of them up. I had made a bunch of kimchi and a bunch of cultured vegetables, but we had a lot of leftover cabbage from a class I had taught. So I was trying to use up this extra cabbage, and I used about 3 or 4 cups of cabbage that was chopped up, a jar of spaghetti sauce, some ground turkey, brown rice, and a bunch of seasonings, and I threw it in that Instapot, and it took about 12 minutes to cook in the Instapot. And then I served it with some of this lemon sourdough bread I had made. And DJ came over that night, and he was eating it, and he looked up at me, just like Macy had the week before, and his eyes were brimming with tears. And he said, I just said this to Macy, why does Mom make such good soup? And I guess Macy replied, I know, right? It's crazy. And then he looked at me and said, this soup is like the perfect thing. I was hoping you would make me something like this. And it just hit the spot. He goes, my nose, it keeps my nose opened. I was getting stuffy. And he goes, this is the perfect thing that I was wanting for dinner. And it was funny because when I told my husband I was making cabbage soup, he kind of turned up his nose because it didn't sound very appealing. But then he told me he wanted even more of it. So I might need to write up this recipe because I really made it out of just looking for ingredients in my house. And boy, did it turn out good. I'm hoping I'm not forgetting a bunch of little things that I put in there. I think I put Worcestershire sauce and some other things. But anyway, it was surprisingly good. And it's kind of my all-in-one soup. It's my way to get my family to eat more vegetables because I put a lot of cabbage in there, and I think there was a little bit of onions or leeks. I can't remember. Leeks are prebiotics, so I love to do that because they help feed the good bacteria in your gut. And so I'm always looking for ways to get my family to eat more vegetables, and throwing them in a pot of soup is one of the easiest ways to do it. I'll go through my fridge and get veggies. I try to eat all my produce every week before it goes bad, so I'm always looking for extra ways to use it. So I'll go through my fridge and I'll throw in some, leftover carrots and leeks or jicama or whatever and throw it in a pot. I'll add some lentils or beans or whatever I can find with some broth, and then I let it simmer. And I love to, sometimes I like to let it simmer on the stove. Instapot's fun and easy if I'm in a hurry, but I do love to make soup that simmers on the stove for a long time because I think it tastes the best. And sometimes I'll let it simmer for several hours. And one of my favorite recipes is I love to add, it's like a vegetable soup. It has eggplant and all different kinds of vegetables in it. And one of my favorite things to put in it is pistachios. I know that sounds weird, but boy, does it make the soup taste good. I have a can of tomatoes in it, and I'll simmer it for a really long time. And there's just something about that soup. It has this flavor. The beans kind of soften, and people love it. It has such a wonderful flavor. And then I always top it with some kind of a cultured food, such as kefir cheese, yogurt, or lots of times we just add a little cultured veggies. And he will kill probiotic foods when the temperature gets above 116 degrees or higher. So I'm careful not to add like the probiotic kefir cheese or the kimchi or some kind of cultured veggie, because most of the time you can't even taste the cultured veggies, but I add it when the soup is warm and not hot. And that way, for instance, when I made that cabbage soup for my son the other night and for my family the other night, I added some kraut juice to it after it was done and after it wasn't super hot. It was just warm, just to get some cultured veggies in them. I love a new version called Kimchi Soup that I actually have on my website at culturedfoodlife.com if you want that recipe. And it's really, really a good soup. I mean, it's really different too. One that I've never had anything like that before, and it's one I like a lot. It has a lot of benefits in it too. And it's a vegetable-rich soup made with broth, and the kimchi gives it this kick that is so good for healing sinuses or respiratory problems or a gut that needs soup for healing. And soup is really, I think that of all the foods I make, soup is really made from my heart. It's really made with love because somebody's either sick or somebody needs comfort, or I'm busy and I just want to be nice to myself and make some soup because it comforts me too. And so it's kind of that meal that I make that really is a way for me to help not only heal my family, but heal myself. And it's a one-pot meal. I mean, I love that. I like not having to make a million things. And I like leftovers. Leftover soup is the best, especially the next day. Miso soup is a probiotic soup, and it's one I really, really love a lot. I really would like to encourage you to start eating miso soup because it's so, so simple to make. And it has good bacteria in it. It has beneficial organisms that are going to really help you. And I think it has a way of soothing the gut and healing the gut. And there's some research on it. I want to share it with you, the different ways I make it, the different ways I use it, and the research behind it, and why I think it's so important for people to have miso soup as many times as they can throughout their cold winter months especially. It's so healing to the body. And miso is a salty paste, and it's usually made from fermented beans, and most often it's made from soybeans, but it can also be made with chickpeas and other beans too. Now, I am not a big fan of soy in any way, shape, or form, unless it's fermented and non-GMO, which most misos are. When I was younger, I jumped on the soy bandwagon thinking it was good for me, and it affected my thyroid. And then when I got off of it, my thyroid went back to the way it was supposed to be, but I was drinking a lot of the soy milks and things that really did affect me in a way that wasn't good. And it actually affected my sister too. So now that doesn't happen if the soy is fermented. And most people and most Japanese people who eat a lot of soy, it's always fermented. And I think that's a really important thing. They've linked a lot of people with creating a lot of estrogen in the body, even linking it to breast cancer, that it's not good for you if you've got those problems because it does create a lot of estrogen in the body. And it's hard on the thyroid. It was hard on me. I actually saw that happen when I was in my early 30s. And so I was always really cautious that any soy I ate was always fermented. Whenever you ferment something, whether it's soy or vegetables or milk or non-dairy milk, anything that is fermented, it really does transform the food into something else. And it's interesting, in the process of fermentation, when things are fermenting, it removes pesticides and chemicals. And I really call it the alchemy of food because it becomes an entirely new food. It really isn't the same as it was before because the vitamins and minerals can increase, and it decreases the sugars and adds probiotics, and it's really an amazing thing. And because miso is fermented, it's filled with beneficial live probiotic cultures that can really change your ecosystem. And I have a lot of recipes in my new book, Cultured Food in a Jar, and on my website. So many things like soups and dips that have miso in them. I've got some really good dips that are miso, or like 2 or 3 ingredients that you can just whip up in no time. And they're just wonderful tasting. And there's something about them. My daughter was telling me they really call her name. They really crave them. I have a miso dip that is in my book, Cultured Food in a Jar, that, I dip apples in and carrots, and I just love it. And it tastes so good, and it's easy to make. And I love finding ways to eat these fermented foods that are super fast and easy, something that you can really add to your life that doesn't take a lot of time and a lot of work. And miso is a really easy one. I really recommend you buy your miso. I mean, it is a lot of work to make miso yourself, and you probably won't do as good a job as the people who are doing it for a living because they really put their heart into it. They do a really good job. And I really recommend and there's different kinds you can buy. There's white and brown and red, and they're all really good. And I encourage you to try them. See which ones you like the best. And then just a jar of miso will last in your refrigerator for crazy forever. I mean, it really lasts a really long time because the good beneficial bacteria in it preserves it and keeps it safe and keeps it fresh in your fridge for a very, very long time. I've had mine for a year and it was perfectly fine. It's still really, really good tasting too. Miso's been eaten in Japan and China for so many centuries, and it really does attract the attention of many because of the health benefits, the anti-aging benefits, and not only that, but it's also because it's really delicious. When you aren't feeling well, I really encourage you to try a bowl of miso soup. It can be especially soothing to your digestive tract and also to your sinuses. And it's really as simple as, getting some hot water and putting a little bit of paste into it and stirring the miso together, maybe adding some little vegetables to it if you want to do that beforehand before you add the miso. But I've got so many easy recipes. I mean, it really takes like less than 5 minutes, and it's so good for you. One of the reasons I like miso so much is the heart health benefits and the reduction in strokes that can happen when you include miso in your diet on a regular basis. There was a really large study that involved 40,462 Japanese participants, and it lasted for over 10 years. And the intake of miso was found to be associated with a decreased risk of one of the major types of strokes. And they found it was off the charts, really an amazing study that showed so many benefits to the miso soup that these Japanese participants had on a regular basis and how protective it was, not only to their hearts, but to their brains and to all of the cardiovascular problems that can occur when you don't have not only good heart health, but good beneficial bacteria that keeps your heart healthy. And they found that really to be true with miso. Since miso is salty, they tested people to see if those who are salt sensitive and were given rise to blood pressure by high intakes of salt, they wanted to know if they had the same problem with miso since miso had a lot of salt in it. But what happened was they had the opposite effect happen with miso. They found that the miso actually lowered their risk of stroke and blood pressure. And so then they did more studies, and they did them on animals, and they repeatedly showed the same results for miso versus regular table salt. And taking in miso did not increase their blood pressure or potential stroke. It actually decreased it. And they believe that was one of the biggest reasons was the beneficial bacteria that was in miso. And they account for these findings through more research is being done on it all the time because it was a really interesting study. Miso soup is really easy to use and make soup with. You take some hot water and you add veggies and then you add a miso paste and you have soup. But I kind of have a little way to do it that allows the probiotics to stay alive. So first, if you add miso to boiling water, you're going to kill the probiotics. So you want to wait until the soup cools slightly. And in a small bowl while your veggies are in the hot water, or if you're boiling veggies in your hot water to make the soup, wait till it cools. And while it's cooling, take a little bit of miso paste, like 1 to 2 tablespoons, and put it in slightly warm water to kind of make like a slurry. And then once your veggies and broth cool down a little bit, you can add the broth or the little slurry to the broth, and you have miso soup. And it's really just vegetables and miso paste. And you can add things like tofu, or you can add chicken, or you can add whatever you want to make it. And I have some really good recipes that add a few other ingredients that make a really good miso soup. I like adding things like rice noodles, veggies, and ginger, and some mushrooms. And when I make that little paste with miso beforehand, I cook the vegetables and then make that little slurry and then just put it in with the rest of the vegetables and the water, and I just have instant soup. You want to look on the miso paste to make sure you have live bacteria cultures on it. And the more that are on the label to tell you the different cultures, the merrier, the best. Those are the best. And that's way you're getting lots and lots of good bacteria. We have lots of info and more info on why probiotic foods, like the ones I talk about on my shows, are easy and fun to make. And just head on over to culturedfoodlife.com and type in the search bar soups, and you'll see some of my blogs and some of my recipes on soup that can help you to make them and to even make them probiotic. And they're yummy and you'll love them. Soup is such an important meal for so many reasons. And just like salad, having a bowl of soup gives you lots of healthy benefits and gives you more veggies packed with nutrients that you probably normally wouldn't eat if you weren't eating a big bowl of soup. Soup is just an important dish to me. It can be an entire meal. It can just be a side dish. But the wealth of ingredients in a bowl of soup provides such a good balance of so many things. I love it because mine can contain carbohydrates, proteins, fats, as well as so many vitamins and minerals that help us to get energy and keep us firing on all cylinders because there's so many nutrients in vegetables and we get more of them in soup. Soup is healthy. That's a no-brainer. And it will get you to eat more veggies and it will fill you up so you'll be less hungry. It's nutrient dense. It's comforting. It makes you feel grateful, as in the case of my kids. They love my soup, or I think it's because they know that I made it for them because they didn't feel good. And any way you think about it, I think soup is really love made visible. At least for me and my family. I make it because I really love them and I feel bad when they're hurting and I know that soup will comfort them. Soup is kind of my body, mind, and soul recipe for wellness. And I love them. I love the recipes that I make because I make them for my family and I love them too. So check out my recipes and drop me a line and share with me your favorite soups because I am always looking for new recipes. And I love it when you guys send me emails and post on my Facebook page or my Instagram account and share with me the things you're doing. It really helps me and I use it all the time. I can't tell you how many things that I have made on my site that I got from one of the people who listened to me or one of my readers from my book or people who just emailed me. I share it all the time with people. So, go to culturedfoodlife.com, drop me a line, share with me your soup recipes, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll make a big soup ebook for everybody because I love soup so much. Well, you guys have a wonderful week. Hugs to you. I hope you make some soup. I hope that this helped you understand why it's so good for you and why it's so comforting. And make some for your family. I do believe that soup is love made visible.